They whispered behind his back as he stepped onto the range, cane in one hand, rifle slung over the other. He's blind. Why is he even here? The SEAL candidates exchanged glances, confusion flickering behind their tactical sunglasses. To them, this was a mistake. A liability. Someone in command had clearly lost their mind. Master Chief Rodriguez didn't respond. He didn't need to. He simply walked to the firing line with the quiet confidence of a man who had nothing to prove and everything already earned. His cloudy eyes scanned nothing, yet his body moved with practiced grace. He turned his head slightly, as if reading the wind, then settled into a stance that silenced even the snickering recruits. He raised his rifle slowly, as if drawing power from the ground itself. Then, crack. One shot. Crack. Another. The rhythm was steady, unshaken. Round after round ripped through the air with mechanical precision. By the end, the range was deathly quiet. No more whispers, only disbelief. When they checked the targets, every shot had hit dead center. Not close, not decent, perfect. Because sometimes, the most lethal warriors aren't guided by sight. They're guided by instinct, experience, and a lifetime of discipline forged in darkness. Welcome to Silent Salute, where we discover that true strength often comes from overcoming what others see as limitations. Before we continue this extraordinary story, tell us in the comments from which city in the world are you watching this video today. And if you believe that human potential knows no boundaries, hit that subscribe button to support our channel. We're honored to share these incredible stories of triumph over adversity. Master Chief Petty Officer Carlos Rodriguez had been instructing advanced marksmanship at Naval Special Warfare Training Facilities for 6 years, ever since an IED explosion in Afghanistan had ended his operational career with SEAL Team 4. The blast that had taken 80% of his vision had also earned him a medical retirement and a collection of medals he'd never wanted to receive. Most people assumed that losing his sight had ended Rodriguez's usefulness to the SEAL community. What they didn't understand was that 22 years of special operations experience, including 12 combat deployments and countless training evolutions, had given him skills that transcended any single sense. He could teach marksmanship not because he could see perfectly, but because he understood the mechanics of precision shooting better than almost anyone alive. The current advanced training class at Coronado included 24 SEAL candidates who'd completed basic training and were now developing specialized skills they'd need for operational deployments. These weren't new recruits struggling through initial selection. These were proven warriors learning the advanced techniques that separated good special operators from legendary ones. But even experienced candidates sometimes struggled to understand how someone with Rodriguez's visual limitations could effectively instruct marksmanship training. They were respectful enough not to question his presence directly, but he could sense their skepticism every time he demonstrated techniques or corrected their form. Lieutenant Jake Morrison was typical of the attitudes Rodriguez encountered. A former Marine sniper with multiple combat deployments and exceptional shooting skills, Morrison had requested assignment to this advanced course specifically to learn from the best instructors the Navy could provide. When he'd arrived to find a visually impaired instructor, his disappointment had been difficult to hide. "I don't understand how this is supposed to work," Morrison had confided to fellow candidate Petty Officer Chen during their first week of training. "How can someone who can't see properly teach us advanced marksmanship?" Chen, who had more experience working with disabled veterans through volunteer programs, was more diplomatic but equally confused. Maybe he's here for the classroom instruction and someone else handles the practical training. But Rodriguez handled both classroom and range instruction, demonstrating shooting techniques with precision that seemed to contradict his obvious visual impairment. He wore glasses with specially tinted lenses that indicated significant vision problems, moved carefully to avoid obstacles, and often asked candidates to describe target conditions that he couldn't see clearly himself. Yet when he demonstrated shooting techniques, his form was flawless. His explanations of ballistics, wind compensation, and target acquisition were detailed and accurate. Most importantly, his ability to diagnose and correct shooting problems in candidates was exceptional, even when he had to rely on descriptions of their target groups rather than direct observation. Rodriguez understood the candidates' confusion and skepticism. He'd felt the same way when he'd first been assigned to training duties after his medical retirement. How could someone with damaged vision effectively teach the visual precision required for advanced marksmanship? It had taken months of experimentation and adaptation to develop teaching methods that worked despite his limitations. The breakthrough had come when Rodriguez realized that his visual impairment forced him to focus on the fundamental principles of marksmanship that many instructors took for granted. Instead of relying on visual feedback, he had to break down shooting techniques into their component parts and teach candidates to feel the difference between proper and improper form. Shooting isn't just about seeing the target, Rodriguez would tell skeptical candidates. It's about understanding ballistics, controlling breathing, managing trigger pull, and maintaining consistent form. Those things can be taught and learned regardless of how well the instructor can see. But he knew that demonstrations were more convincing than explanations. That's why he'd requested permission to participate in this week's Advanced Marksmanship Evaluation, where candidates would be tested on their ability to engage multiple targets under challenging conditions. The exercise was designed to replicate the kind of precision shooting SEALs might encounter during actual operations. Multiple targets at various distances, time constraints, environmental challenges, and evaluation criteria that demanded near-perfect accuracy. It was the kind of test that separated competent marksmen from elite snipers. Rodriguez's participation wasn't required for his instructor duties, but he wanted to demonstrate that his teaching methods produced results because they were based on sound principles, not despite his visual limitations. If he could perform at the level he expected from his students, maybe they'd understand that effective instruction came from knowledge and experience rather than perfect vision. The morning of the evaluation, Rodriguez arrived at the range early to familiarize himself with the setup. He walked the firing line carefully, noting wind direction, target distances, and environmental conditions that would affect shooting accuracy. His preparation was methodical and thorough, the result of years of adapting his operational methods to work within his physical limitations. Lieutenant Morrison and the other candidates were already discussing the day's challenges when Rodriguez approached the firing line. The test would involve engaging 15 targets at distances ranging from 100 to 800 meters, using different weapons systems and shooting positions. Each candidate would be scored on accuracy, speed, and their ability to adapt to changing conditions. Master Chief, Morrison said respectfully, "Are you observing today's evaluation?" "Actually, Lieutenant, I'm participating," Rodriguez replied. "If that's acceptable to you and the other candidates." The question created an awkward moment. None of the candidates wanted to seem disrespectful to a senior instructor, but they also couldn't understand how someone with obvious vision problems could compete in an advanced marksmanship evaluation. "Sir," Petty Officer Chen said carefully, "we'd be honored to have you participate. But are you sure the evaluation conditions are appropriate for your situation?" Rodriguez appreciated Chen's diplomatic concern. "Petty Officer, I appreciate your consideration. But the conditions are exactly why I want to participate. If my teaching methods are sound, they should work regardless of the instructor's physical capabilities." Chief Petty Officer Williams, who was overseeing the evaluation, approached the group. "Master Chief Rodriguez has requested to participate in today's exercise as a demonstration of advanced marksmanship techniques. His participation is voluntary and will be scored using the same criteria applied to all candidates." Williams looked around at the candidates. "Gentlemen, you'll be shooting alongside one of the most experienced marksmen in naval special warfare. I suggest you pay attention to his methods." The candidates exchanged glances, still uncertain about how this would work, but unwilling to openly question the decision of senior leadership. Rodriguez began his preparation routine, which the candidates noticed was more detailed and methodical than their own. He spent several minutes listening to wind conditions, testing atmospheric pressure with instruments, and making careful adjustments to his equipment based on environmental factors rather than visual observation. "Master Chief," Morrison asked, "how do you determine wind speed and direction without being able to see environmental indicators clearly?" Rodriguez welcomed the question. "Lieutenant, wind creates sound patterns that are actually more reliable than visual indicators. I can hear velocity changes, direction shifts, and atmospheric conditions that might not be visible to the naked eye." He demonstrated by describing current wind conditions in detail, including velocity changes and direction shifts that the candidates verified with their own instruments. His accuracy was remarkable, suggesting that his alternative methods might actually be superior to conventional visual assessment. As the evaluation began, Rodriguez took his position on the firing line alongside the candidates. His movements were deliberate and confident, showing none of the hesitation or uncertainty the candidates had expected from someone with visual impairment. The first stage of the evaluation involved engaging targets at 100 meters using standard military rifles. This was considered the easy portion, designed to establish baseline accuracy before moving to more challenging distances and conditions. Rodriguez assumed a prone shooting position with fluid precision, his body alignment perfect despite having to rely primarily on muscle memory and tactile feedback rather than visual confirmation. He adjusted his scope based on atmospheric readings rather than visual target acquisition, working with the methodical precision of someone who'd learned to compensate for his limitations through superior technique. Lieutenant Morrison, shooting from the position next to Rodriguez, couldn't help but watch the Master Chief's preparation routine. Every movement was purposeful and economical, suggesting years of practice in adapting standard marksmanship techniques to work within physical constraints. Ready on the firing line, Chief Williams called out. You have 2 minutes to engage 5 targets. Begin when ready. Rodriguez's first shot broke the morning stillness with perfect timing, his breathing control and trigger pull executed with textbook precision. The candidates had been expecting to hear multiple shots as he attempted to locate and engage targets he couldn't see clearly. Instead, there was a single, perfectly timed shot followed by deliberate repositioning for the next target. Morrison fired his own first round and immediately checked his scope to assess target impact before engaging the next target. When he glanced toward Rodriguez's targets, he was stunned to see a perfect center mass hit on the first target. Rodriguez's second shot followed shortly after, again with the precise timing that indicated confidence rather than uncertainty. No hesitation, no adjustment shots, just methodical engagement of targets with the rhythm of someone who understood exactly what he was doing. By the time the 2-minute time limit expired, Rodriguez had engaged all 5 targets with 5 shots, while most candidates had used 6 to 8 rounds to ensure adequate target coverage. The efficiency of his shooting was remarkable, suggesting either exceptional skill or an alternative methodology that was superior to conventional approaches. When the targets were scored, Rodriguez had achieved 5 perfect hits, while even experienced candidates like Morrison had scored 4 hits with 1 marginal impact. Master Chief, Morrison said during the brief break between stages, I have to ask, how are you achieving that level of accuracy without being able to see the targets clearly? Rodriguez welcomed the opportunity to explain his methods. Lieutenant, precise shooting isn't primarily about visual target acquisition. It's about understanding ballistics, environmental conditions, and weapon characteristics well enough to predict exactly where each shot will impact. He continued, when you lose significant visual capability, you're forced to rely on the fundamental principles of marksmanship rather than visual feedback. That often results in more consistent shooting because you're not being distracted by visual variables that don't actually affect bullet trajectory. Petty Officer Chun joined the conversation. Sir, are you saying that visual targeting can actually interfere with accurate shooting? Not exactly, Rodriguez clarified. But many shooters become too dependent on visual confirmation and don't develop the underlying skills that ensure consistent accuracy. When I lost most of my vision, I had to master those underlying skills or stop shooting altogether. The second stage of the evaluation moved to targets at 300 meters, requiring candidates to account for bullet drop and wind effects that weren't significant at shorter distances. This was where advanced marksmanship skills began to separate competent shooters from exceptional ones. Rodriguez approached this stage with the same methodical preparation, but now his alternative techniques became more obvious to observing candidates. Instead of relying primarily on visual target acquisition, he used audio cues, environmental measurements, and mechanical calculations to determine proper scope adjustments. Master Chief, Morrison asked, how do you determine range and wind compensation without visual range finding? Rodriguez demonstrated his method, using audio cues to estimate distance and mechanical instruments to measure atmospheric conditions. I use a combination of sound reflection patterns, environmental pressure readings, and mathematical calculations based on known ballistic properties. His explanations were detailed enough that several candidates began taking notes, recognizing that his methods might actually be more precise than their conventional approaches. The 300-meter targets required significantly more complex shooting, with environmental factors affecting bullet trajectory enough to cause misses if not properly compensated. Most candidates took several shots to achieve satisfactory target engagement, adjusting their aim based on observed impact points. Rodriguez again fired single shots at each target, his confidence in his calculations allowing him to achieve first-round hits without the adjustment shots that other candidates required. His target scores continued to be exceptional, achieving accuracy that matched or exceeded the performance of candidates with perfect vision. During the break between stages, Chief Williams approached Rodriguez privately. "Master Chief, I've been observing your shooting methods with interest. Are you willing to explain your techniques to the candidates as part of their advanced training?" Rodriguez nodded agreement. "Chief, I think it might be valuable for them to understand that there are multiple approaches to achieving precision marksmanship. Some of those approaches might actually be more reliable than conventional methods." Williams gathered the candidates around Rodriguez for an impromptu instruction session. "Gentlemen, Master Chief Rodriguez is going to explain alternative marksmanship techniques that don't rely primarily on visual target acquisition." Rodriguez began with the fundamental principle underlying his methods. Precision shooting is ultimately about physics, ballistics, atmospheric conditions, and mechanical precision. Visual targeting is just one way to apply those physics, and it's not necessarily the most accurate way. He explained how he used sound patterns to determine wind conditions more accurately than visual indicators. Wind creates specific audio signatures based on velocity and direction. Once you learn to interpret those sounds, you can make more precise compensation adjustments than you can by watching grass or flags. The candidates were fascinated by his descriptions of alternative techniques for range estimation, environmental assessment, and mechanical precision that achieved superior results through non-visual methods. Lieutenant Morrison raised his hand. "Master Chief, are you suggesting that your visual impairment actually makes you a better marksman?" Rodriguez considered the question carefully. "Not exactly, Lieutenant. But losing significant vision forced me to develop alternative skills that are more reliable than the visual methods most shooters depend on. In some conditions, those alternative methods produce better results." The third stage of the evaluation involved the most challenging shooting scenarios. Targets at distances up to 800 meters, multiple shooting positions, time constraints, and environmental conditions designed to test the absolute limits of marksmanship capability. At 800 meters, bullet trajectory was significantly affected by atmospheric conditions, requiring shooters to account for multiple variables simultaneously. Wind speed and direction at different elevations along the bullet's flight path could cause significant deviation from point of aim. Temperature, humidity, and barometric pressure all influence ballistic performance in ways that required advanced calculation and compensation. Most importantly, targets at this distance were difficult to see clearly even for shooters with perfect vision, forcing everyone to rely more heavily on the fundamental skills that Rodriguez had been describing. Rodriguez approached the long-range targets with visible confidence, his preparation routine now familiar to candidates who'd been watching his methods throughout the morning. He spent considerable time listening to environmental conditions, taking precise measurements with his instruments, and making mechanical adjustments to his scope based on calculated rather than visual data. This is where his methods should really show their effectiveness, Morrison commented to Chun as they prepared for their own attempts. If he can achieve accuracy at 800 meters using non-visual techniques, then his alternative approaches are genuinely superior. The long-range targets required candidates to demonstrate not just marksmanship skills, but also advanced understanding of ballistics and environmental factors. Each shot demanded precise calculation of trajectory, wind compensation, and mechanical adjustments that tested the limits of both equipment and operator capability. Rodriguez fired his first long-range shot after several minutes of careful preparation. The candidates couldn't immediately assess his accuracy at this distance, but his shooting rhythm remained confident and methodical, suggesting he was applying the same principles that had produced exceptional results at shorter ranges. When all candidates had completed the long-range portion of the evaluation, Chief Williams called for a ceasefire and target assessment. The scoring would require careful measurement of impact points, as targets at 800 meters demanded near-perfect accuracy to achieve qualifying scores. While waiting for target assessment, Rodriguez offered to answer questions about his shooting methods and the principles underlying alternative marksmanship approaches. Petty Officer Chen asked, "Master Chief, how did you develop these alternative techniques? Did you receive special training after your injury?" Rodriguez's expression grew more serious. "Petty Officer, I developed these methods because I refused to accept that losing my vision meant the end of my usefulness to the SEAL community. It took months of experimentation, frustration, and determination to prove that precision shooting was possible using non-visual techniques." He continued, "The techniques I've demonstrated today aren't just adaptations for visual impairment. They're enhanced methods that can improve any shooter's accuracy by focusing on the fundamental physics of ballistics rather than relying primarily on visual feedback." Lieutenant Morrison was particularly interested in the practical applications. "Sir, could these methods be useful in operational scenarios where visual targeting is compromised?" "Absolutely," Rodriguez replied. "Combat often involves shooting in conditions where visual targeting is difficult or impossible: low light, smoke, obscured sight lines, stress-induced vision problems. Understanding alternative techniques gives operators additional capabilities when conventional methods aren't effective." The conversation was interrupted by Chief Williams returning with target assessment results. His expression suggested the scores were notable enough to warrant immediate attention. "Gentlemen," Williams announced, "the long-range target scores demonstrate some interesting patterns in marksmanship effectiveness." He began reading results. "Lieutenant Morrison, for hits out of 5 targets, with 1 marginal impact. Petty Officer Chun, 3 hits with 2 misses. Petty Officer Anderson, 3 hits with 2 marginal impacts." Williams continued through the list of candidate scores, which ranged from adequate to excellent, but showed the normal variation expected in challenging shooting conditions. "Master Chief Rodriguez," Williams concluded, 5 hits out of 5 targets, all center mass impacts, with grouping consistency that exceeds qualifying standards for sniper training." The range fell silent as candidates processed the implications of Rodriguez's perfect score under the most challenging conditions of the evaluation. Morrison was the first to speak. "Master Chief, you achieved perfect accuracy at 800 meters using non-visual techniques. That's better than most of us scored using conventional methods." Rodriguez nodded acknowledgement, but remained modest about his performance. "Lieutenant, the techniques I've demonstrated work because they're based on sound principles of ballistics and environmental assessment. They're not magic, they're just different approaches to the same fundamental challenges." But Chief Williams wanted to emphasize the broader implications of Rodriguez's demonstration. "Gentlemen, what you've witnessed today is proof that alternative approaches to familiar challenges can sometimes produce superior results. Master Chief Rodriguez has developed methods that enhance rather than compromise marksmanship capability." Petty Officer Chen raised his hand. "Chief, will we be learning these alternative techniques as part of our advanced training?" Williams looked to Rodriguez for his response. "If there's interest," Rodriguez said, "I'm willing to incorporate alternative marksmanship methods into the standard curriculum. But I want to be clear that these aren't replacement techniques. They're additional tools that can enhance conventional marksmanship training." The candidates expressed unanimous interest in learning Rodriguez's alternative methods, recognizing that his demonstration had proven their effectiveness under the most demanding conditions. But Rodriguez had one more surprise for the candidates. "Before we conclude today's evaluation, I'd like to demonstrate one additional capability that alternative marksmanship methods can provide." He gestured toward a series of targets that hadn't been used during the formal evaluation, small reactive targets positioned at various distances and angles that were designed to test rapid target acquisition and engagement capabilities. These targets are designed to replicate combat scenarios where shooters must engage multiple threats quickly and accurately, Rodriguez explained. Conventional visual targeting methods often struggle with the rapid transitions required for effective multiple target engagement. Chief Williams looked surprised. "Master Chief, those targets are part of advanced tactical shooting curricula that we normally reserve for experienced operators." "Chief, with your permission, I'd like to demonstrate how alternative targeting methods can enhance rapid engagement capabilities." Williams nodded agreement, curious to see how Rodriguez's non-visual techniques would adapt to dynamic shooting scenarios. Rodriguez positioned himself at the firing line facing the reactive targets, which would present themselves at random intervals requiring immediate engagement. The exercise was designed to test not just marksmanship accuracy, but also situational awareness, rapid target acquisition, and smooth transitions between multiple engagement points. The key to effective multiple target engagement, Rodriguez explained to the watching candidates, is understanding that visual target acquisition is actually the slowest part of the engagement process. If you can eliminate dependence on visual search and acquisition, you can engage targets much more rapidly. He demonstrated his alternative method. I use audio cues to detect target presentation, predetermined mechanical positions for rapid weapon orientation, and ballistic calculations that allow immediate, accurate fire without visual confirmation. The reactive target system activated, presenting targets at random intervals that required engagement within seconds of presentation. Rodriguez began engaging targets with a speed and accuracy that seemed impossible given his visual limitations. His weapon moved smoothly between engagement points without the searching or hesitation that typically characterized rapid target engagement. Each shot was immediate and accurate, suggesting he was using targeting methods that were faster than conventional visual acquisition. Lieutenant Morrison watched in amazement as Rodriguez engaged 12 targets in less than 30 seconds, achieving hits on each target without any apparent visual targeting or adjustment shots. "This is impossible," Morrison muttered to Chun. "He's engaging targets faster than I can even see them present themselves." But Rodriguez's explanation made the technique comprehensible. "I'm not visually searching for targets. I'm listening for the audio signatures of target presentation and using predetermined weapon positions that I've calculated for each potential target location." When the exercise concluded, Rodriguez had achieved perfect scores on rapid multiple target engagement, demonstrating capabilities that exceeded the performance of candidates with perfect vision using conventional methods. Chief Williams was clearly impressed. "Master Chief, your alternative targeting methods aren't just adapted techniques for visual impairment. They're enhanced capabilities that could improve operational effectiveness for any shooter." Rodriguez nodded agreement. "Chief, that's exactly what I hoped to demonstrate. These methods didn't develop as compensation for disability. They developed as enhanced techniques that happen to work without dependence on visual feedback." The candidates were eager to understand the practical applications of what they'd witnessed. "Master Chief," Morrison asked, "could these techniques be taught to operators with normal vision as enhancement training?" "Absolutely," Rodriguez replied. "In fact, I think they should be standard parts of advanced marksmanship curricula. Understanding alternative targeting methods gives shooters additional capabilities when conventional methods are compromised or when enhanced speed and accuracy are required." Petty Officer Chun was taking detailed notes. "Sir, how long does it take to develop proficiency in these alternative methods?" Rodriguez considered the question. "For operators with existing marksmanship skills, basic proficiency can be developed in a few weeks. Advanced capability requires months of practice, but the results justify the investment in training time." Chief Williams made an immediate decision. "Master Chief Rodriguez, I'm requesting that your alternative marksmanship methods be incorporated into our standard advanced training curriculum immediately. What you've demonstrated today represents a significant enhancement to our operational capabilities." Rodriguez was pleased but wanted to ensure proper implementation. "Chief, I recommend starting with basic principles and gradually building to advanced applications. These techniques require solid understanding of ballistics and environmental factors before they can be effectively applied." Williams nodded agreement. "We'll develop a phased training program that incorporates your methods with existing curricula. But I want these capabilities available to our operators as soon as possible." The candidates were enthusiastic about learning Rodriguez's techniques, recognizing that they'd witnessed capabilities that could significantly enhance their operational effectiveness. Lieutenant Morrison approached Rodriguez after the formal evaluation concluded. "Master Chief, I owe you an apology. When I first saw that you'd be instructing our marksmanship training, I was skeptical about how someone with visual impairment could effectively teach precision shooting." Rodriguez appreciated Morrison's honesty. "Lieutenant, your skepticism was understandable. I've had to prove the effectiveness of these methods repeatedly throughout my career. The key is demonstrating results rather than just explaining techniques. Morrison continued, "Sir, what you've shown us today isn't just adapted training for disability. It's enhanced capability that makes all of us better shooters. Thank you for sharing these methods with us." Rodriguez's smile reflected the satisfaction of someone who'd successfully transformed personal challenges into professional contributions. "Lieutenant, that's exactly what I hoped to achieve. These techniques exist because I refuse to accept limitations on my ability to contribute to the SEAL community." Rodriguez's demonstration that day fundamentally changed how naval special warfare approached advanced marksmanship training. His alternative techniques were formally incorporated into curricula at training facilities throughout the special operations community, providing enhanced capabilities to operators regardless of their visual acuity. The methods he developed through personal necessity became standard tools for situations where conventional visual targeting was compromised or where enhanced speed and accuracy were required. Combat operations in low-light conditions, obscured environments, or high-stress scenarios all benefited from techniques that didn't depend primarily on visual feedback. Lieutenant Morrison became one of Rodriguez's most dedicated students, eventually achieving instructor certification in alternative marksmanship methods and helping to spread the techniques throughout the SEAL community. Years later, as a senior officer, Morrison would credit Rodriguez's training with saving his life during combat operations where conventional targeting methods would have failed. The advanced training class that had witnessed Rodriguez's demonstration became advocates for alternative marksmanship techniques throughout their operational careers. They understood that enhanced capability could come from unexpected sources and that apparent limitations sometimes concealed superior methods. Rodriguez's story spread throughout the military community as an example of how personal challenges could be transformed into professional contributions. Veterans with various disabilities found inspiration in his example, understanding that alternative approaches to familiar tasks sometimes produced better results than conventional methods. His techniques were eventually adopted by civilian law enforcement agencies and competitive shooting organizations, proving that the principles he developed had applications far beyond military special operations. The physics of ballistics and environmental assessment worked the same way regardless of the context in which they were applied. But perhaps Rodriguez's greatest achievement was proving that value to any organization came from capability and contribution rather than conventional measures of physical qualification. His alternative methods weren't accommodations for disability. They were enhanced techniques that improved everyone's performance. The range where Rodriguez had demonstrated perfect accuracy despite visual impairment became a symbol of how human potential could transcend apparent limitations. New candidates were regularly reminded that effectiveness came from understanding fundamental principles rather than depending on any single capability. Rodriguez continued his instructor duties for many years, eventually training other disabled veterans to develop their own alternative techniques for contributing to military operations. His example proved that retirement from operational duties didn't mean retirement from service to the military community. His legacy lived on in the enhanced capabilities of countless operators who'd learned his techniques, the improved training methods that incorporated his innovations, and the broader understanding that human potential was limited only by imagination and determination. The whispers that had questioned his presence at the firing line that morning were replaced by recognition that he'd brought capabilities no one else possessed. His blindness hadn't ended his usefulness to the SEAL community. It had forced him to develop superior methods that enhanced everyone's effectiveness. Rodriguez's demonstration proved that the most dangerous warriors were often those who'd learned to overcome apparent limitations through enhanced technique and superior understanding of fundamental principles. His perfect accuracy that day wasn't despite his visual impairment. It was because of the alternative methods his impairment had forced him to develop. In the end, Rodriguez's story became a testament to human adaptability and the power of refusing to accept limitations on personal capability. He'd lost his vision, but gained insights that made him more effective than he'd ever been with perfect sight. This story was brought to you by Silent Salute. Before we leave you today, here's our question. Have you ever witnessed someone achieve extraordinary results by adapting to limitations in ways that actually enhance their capabilities? Someone who turned apparent disadvantages into superior methods that benefited everyone around them? Tell us in the comments about the adapted excellence you've seen in your own life. And if you believe that human potential knows no boundaries, hit that subscribe button to support our channel. Every story reminds us that limitations often hide enhanced capabilities, and that the most extraordinary achievements come from those who refuse to accept what others consider impossible. We'll see you in the next one.